Prick up your ears.
The sound of DTM.
My car sounds like music to my ears.
My favorite sound when the car is leaving the pits.
My favorite sound, the cheering of the fans. Crank it up.
My favorite sound? The silence before the lights go green.
Full blast.
Jetzt sollte es eigentlich on air geschaltet sein. Ach so, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Passt, alles gut. Super, danke dir. Dann fange ich dann so, ja, gegen 7, 38 Uhr. Ja, danke. Ja.
Be aware.
It's gonna be loud.
Okay. Ja, wie gesagt, wir fangen um 17:38 an und lasst immer wieder Lücken zwischendrin, dass ihr dann irgendwie die Chance habt. Ja, ja. Genau. Genau, richtig. Richtig, so machen wir es. Okay. Weil das Rennen selber dauert 40 Minuten, also von dem her kommen wir mit der Zeit gut hin. Ja. Okay. Und für morgen telefonieren wir dann noch. Danke, ciao.
Qualifying gewesen, aber wir haben die Rennen in Hockenheim gesehen. Es wird mit Sicherheit ein saugeiles Rennen, gerade durch diese ganzen DRS-Geschichten jetzt. Und ja, ich bin mal gespannt, wie lange man sich da vorne halten kann.
Dein nächster Einsatz?
Nächstes Wochenende ist 24-Stunden-Rennen am Nürburgring. Da greifen wir mit unserem BMW M6 GT3 an. Letzte VLN haben wir gewonnen, also ich glaube, wir sind gut aufgestellt.
Da sind wir gespannt zu verfolgen im Livestream und natürlich bei...
Look at Timo Scheider now in the sunshine here, the late afternoon at Red Bull Ring. And race number 1 of the weekend for DTM is about to get underway. And it is a packed grid down there ahead of the race. Wittmann Blomqvist, the front row with Adrien Tombe, P3. And during the course of qualifying, David Addison alongside me. There are many drivers that we felt are perhaps out of position in terms of where we would expect them to be. One of them being former champion Mike Rockenfeller.
Yeah, he had a pretty awful qualifying session, and he said that the track conditions were better at the start than at the end, so everybody was looking quicker on their first set of tyres, not their second, and he never got a clear lap in. So a little bit frustrated, although why the track lost its speed is less clear. But Mike Rockenfeller, 17th fastest in the Phoenix round Audi. Bruno Spengler is another of the many champions on the grid. He's only 14th, so he's somebody else with work to do. And of course, this is the notional sprint race, no pit stop, so you can't be too clever on strategy here. You've got to do it by pure graft.
Yes, it is. It's hard work, isn't it? And that's what's got to be done. So there we can see Bruno Spengler. Final stages of preparation before getting into the car. Robert Wickens then, perhaps expected a bit more from Robert, if I'm honest with you, following his showing in Hockenheim. And didn't perhaps deliver during qualifying as much as I would have expected from the Canadian. Robert Wickens then going from P13. Here's the grid, though, in full. And the front row, as I mentioned, it's Marco Wickman and Tom Blomqvist locking out row 1.
Then you get to Adrian Tombe, the best of the Audi pilots. He out-qualified Eduardo Mortara for row 2.
Next up, it's another BMW lockout. It's Timo Glock and it's Maxime Martin going P5 and P6.
Then you get to Paul di Resta and Martin Tomczyk, also a good effort for 8th in qualifying alongside the Hockenheim winner.
Then we see Matthias Ekstrom and Antonio Felix da Costa going on the 5th row.
And then behind them, Augusto Farfus and Maxi Goetz, BMW and Mercedes 11th and 12th.
Robert Wickens then, who we saw just before the grid graphics, P13, alongside him Bruno Spengler, P14.
More with work to do, Nico Müller, pole position at Hockenheim, 15th in Austria. Daniel Junqueira lines up alongside.
Then we see two that we consider to be out of position, Mike Rockenfeller and Jamie Green on the 9th row of the grid.
And somebody else out of position, you could argue, Timo Scheider. He's only 19th. He's ahead of Lucas Auer for 20th.
Then it's Miguel Molina and Esteban Ocon.
And then Gary Paffett and Christian Vitoris complete the grid. And let's go back down to the grid and rejoin Verena.
Thanks very much, Verena.
You'd have to say that BMW is in the box seat here, because if you look at the, not the grid, but the speed trap statistics, the top 8 cars, the fastest 8, all the BMWs in a block. So anything other than a BMW was 9th or slower in the qualifying session. The BMWs, through the speed trap, the cars to have.
Okay.
And based on qualifying as well, of course, there is the weight that the cars will then run at for the races. It's based on a theoretical best lap time. It all gets a bit complicated, but in simple terms, the Audis and the Mercedes are lighter. They are 1,115 kilos each, and the BMWs are 17.5. So the BMWs, before we get to the race, before the weights are added, were the fastest in speed traps. Now they've just copped 2.5 kilos more than the opposition. Let's see how that's going to affect things come 40 minutes plus a lap of racing as Paul di Resta gets on board the Mercedes.
So Paul di Resta then victorious in Hockenheim, and there is Maxime Martin, a BMW driver, and he was racing last weekend, David?
At Silverstone, yeah, in the Endurance Cup in Blancpain GT Series, parachuted into the Rover Racing M6, but whereas in days of yore he was the gun driver and would go last, he went first. It was Philip Eng in that car who was kept in reserve as the star for the very end, new BMW factory driver. Speaking of which, Timo Glock, of course, is a BMW driver, and he will start 5th on the grid for this first race of the weekend, as now the tyre warmers come off and fresh Hankook tyres go onto the cars. Timo Glock lining up for 5th on the grid, then Maxime Martin 6th. Niki Lauda is here as a proud Austrian fan, and talking to Timo Glock before the drivers concentrated on their preparations ready for the race. He's not the only former world champion here. His teammate from 1979, also Nelson Piquet, is here. There's a real old boys act. Eduardo Mortara then, winner here last year. He'll start 4th on the grid. There is the Castrol Edge Audi as we get ready for race 1. So
It's the Red Bull Ring, and there is the starting grid. Wittmann, Blomqvist, Tombe, Mortara, Glock, Martin, De Resta, Tomczyk, Ekstrom, and then you can see the rest of the order there in the sunshine here at Red Bull Ring for DTM race number 1, which is the 3rd race of season 2016, and it is the shorter race of the 2 with no pit stops. And from a strategic point of view, therefore, the teams can't have too much influence once the cars are out there and on the grid. Can they, David?
Not really. You might be able to have a sacrificial lamb to help somebody if you take your brand. But we'll have to wait and see how the brands play this, including Audi. And Verena is with Audi boss Dieter Gas.
Thanks, Verena. So the words then of Dieter Gas as we look at our pole sitter, Marco Wittmann. He commenting as my colleague alongside me did at the speed of the BMWs. I wonder what difference that 2.5 kilos is going to make, whether it's negligible.
I think it's going to have a different effect at different parts of the circuit. I think it might hurt off the line because you've got that climb up towards turn 1. So they might get mugged off the line. We'll wait and see. And that long climb up to turn 1 and then the further climb towards turn 2, the Remus corner, it might start to affect there. But I think the rest of the lap, downhill and the nice flowing section, probably won't matter too much.
Okay. We get a nice heli shot of the circuit here, and actually, until you walk the circuit, you don't realise quite how undulating it is. The pictures don't always give you that, but it is quite an uphill stretch in various places and downhill in others, naturally. Paul De Resta leads the championship then, 37 points. Robert Wickens is P2, 28 points. So that's after, of course, the first round that took place at Hockenheim just a couple of weeks ago. And there, beautiful background. Uli Fritz then, head of Mercedes DTM. He's with Verena right now. Thanks, Verena. So Uli Fritz then, who I'm tempted to say, stating the obvious really, that is, it's going to be jolly hard work, isn't it? Yeah. And when you consider that top Mercedes drivers like Gary Paffett is starting P23, I know you found out that he had some problems, didn't he, in free practice? And
yeah, it was an electrical gremlin, and I think that carried over into qualifying. Yeah, because so much of a modern-day racing car has an electronic element. Sure. So clearly there was big frustration, and Esteban Ocon, who is still learning about a DTM car, he's near the back as well. Christian Vitoris only did 1 run rather than 2, and they called that wrong because, as we'd heard from Mike Rockenfeller, the track was at its better in the first half of the session. Well, Vitoris sacrificed that to go out and do 1 run at the end, and it was the wrong call. So they gambled. They didn't gamble right, but hopefully he's kept a set of tyres in reserve by only doing 1 run. But from 24th on the grid, little good will it do him, I fear.
Big ask, yes.
Yeah.
A big ask.
So the grid is clear. They're going to get 1 final warming up lap in order to get some warmth into the rubber, to have a last look at what really is a fabulous circuit. People that used to come here in the 70s and the 80s and remember the old Österreich ring say, oh, it's nothing like the old circuit. But for a modern Formula One venue, it's a great circuit. It is absolutely pristine. You can watch from anywhere around the circuit and see more than just one corner. It's got this real amphitheatre feel to it. The drivers love it because it's fast, it's undulating. There are bits where you can overtake, bits where you can get a toe, and of course you've also got the DRS to factor into this race, where there are effectively 14 uses of it. So that, if you get a good run out of turn 1 in the slipstream up to the slower Remus corner and you can use DRS, there is the chance of some good overtaking around here.
Okay. Well, we are about to see as the cars are off then on their formation lap. All the cars are coming through. Now, David mentions the fact that going up from turn 1 to 2 is very uphill. But before that, let's talk to Niki Lauda. He's with Verena Ray. Doesn't he always tell it the way it is?
Absolutely, absolutely. He always did.
Yeah.
Great guy, Niki Lauda. Of course, who did have a different involvement in the DTM a few years ago, and his son was a Mercedes driver in the championship. But he only lasted a season, I think I'm right in saying. You've just seen a graphic of the lap split into the 3 sectors that we'll be talking about. The first sector is on the, it ends on the run up towards turn 2, and often we'll talk about people having been quicker than anybody else in the race at that point. A lot of it is down to a toe, but it can, of course, bring you into the mix to overtake at that slower Remus corner, as David was explaining a moment ago. It's that big, big climb uphill. It's a very slow corner, the slowest corner on the lap. Get it right, you're a hero. Get it wrong, you run out wide. It can have all sorts of consequences.
And what people don't realise sometimes is actually after you've made the turn, it still climbs uphill for a section, doesn't it, before you then go into that downhill run. Yeah,
you're still turning uphill, and just as it straightens out, you drop over the brow, and then it carries on. So, yeah, it's got so much in it, this lap. It's a great circuit, it really is. There's Nico Müller. He's got work to do, as we've been saying, starting from 15th on the grid. So the cars now make their way into place. Pole position, of course, on the racing line side, so on the outside of the track.
3, 2, 1, stop.
Marco Wittmann counted up to his grid box.
Yes.
Precisely.
Had a breath on him like Bill Withers then, didn't he, that engineer?
Yes. Wait for his album to be released.
Right. So there is the Audi garage then. Wolfgang Ulrich. We wait for the final cars to come into grid. We await that Marshall who's waving the yellow at the moment. He'll wave a green once the grid is set and all the cars are there, and then it will be the start sequence. So I think all the cars are there now. We await that green flag at the back. The light's right at the top of the screen for you. There is the green flag being waved at the back. And we are about to go racing. DTM. 2 lights. 3, 4, 5. Lights are out. Marco Wittmann then seemingly with a reasonable start. Adrian Tombe bogging down though, so he loses a place before they even get to turn number 1 as they go 3, 4 abreast.
And Tombe way out wide, and there's a spin. It's Ekstrom who's gone around. Are they all going to avoid him? Not entirely sure they did. There are more cars off in avoidance. O'Connor's demolished one of the markers. Certainly Ekstrom went round. He may have been collected. Green and Rockenfeller run together. No, Ekstrom's got away, so thankfully the road is clear. Cars making their way then up through turn 2 for the first time. Molina gets forced out wide as well, but a very good start by Wittmann. Blomqvist second. Mortara is up to third.
We will double check.
So Ekstrom's been on the radio asking about damage, and the cars work their way down towards turn 3 for the first time, with Timo Glock running 4th, but Mortara trying to stay with these very fleet BMWs.
Absolutely, Eduardo Mortara then right from the very start, and got a brilliant start and was able to mug Adrian Tombe. He currently runs in P3, does Eduardo Mortara, but as you say, these fleet BMWs do seem to be getting away now. Marco Wittmann and Blomqvist then. there, the order on the left-hand side of the screen for you as we watch Jamie Green in the all-orange Audi there, running way back down the order in P19. So the shorter of the two races.
I can't see anything on page. There's no pressures on the display like in green.
Not absolutely sure. I heard pressures in there.
It sounded to me as though he wasn't getting the information he needed on the display about possible damage, like has he got a puncture, can't see the tyre pressures, the data he needs, the information isn't seemingly coming up on the display. That Scheider running way wide of the order at the end of lap 1. Wittmann leading, Blomqvist second, Mortara third, Glock fourth, Tomczyk fifth, Tombay sixth, De Resta seventh, Martin eighth, ninth, Da Costa 10th, Farfus 4, 5, 6 pretty much in a line, and they're a challenge being made up on the inside, working their way through turn 2. De Resta losing out a little bit as up the inside went Martin, so Martin goes 7th now.
So good move from Martin then as we watch the cars down from turn 2 to 3. And Wittmann, Blomqvist come through. Edvaldo Mortara with Timo Glock right behind him. Bear in mind that Glock is another BMW driver, and then it's Tomczyk with another BMW. So a bit of a familiar ring about the top few places here, isn't there? And the one that's splitting them all is Edvaldo Mortara, but you can see that he is slipping away. And we go on board with him now. He's really, really struggling to keep on terms with Blomqvist and Wittmann, who are up the road.
And part of that is that he's got to defend, of course, because Glock is all over him, so he's having to take more defensive lines. Then you've got Tomczyk running ahead of Tombay, then it's Martin. Martin is on a mission, so all the BMWs still looking good. You're on board now with Glock out of the last corner up towards the timing line. Wittmann led last lap through by just 2/10. Now it's up to 6/10 of a second as they go over the line. And an incident between Ekstrom, Martin and Da Costa is under investigation. So the race leaders work lap 3. We've got over 36.5 minutes still to run, plus the lap at the end. Through goes Jamie Green, who is way down in 18th spot at the moment. The leading two BMWs getting away. Now, is Blomqvist going to be able to challenge Wittmann here, or is BMW going to think about a safe result? Red Bull car leading at Red Bull Ring, but Blomqvist has certainly got the pace to live with Wittmann.
And Blomqvist just deployed his DRS to get ever closer to Marco Wittmann ahead. Of course, Marco Wittmann will have no benefit of DRS because he's not got a car ahead of him. So that's where Blomqvist does have a slight advantage, doesn't he? And both of them are getting away from Edo Mortara now.
If Blomqvist is quicker...
I can build it.
Well, the radio cuts out. If Blomqvist is the quicker of the two, he needs to be allowed by or get by, otherwise Mortara will be up with them. And then there's the chance from BMW's perspective of an Audi getting a win that should be theirs. So they need to think about this cleverly.
Yes.
Now this is a replay of the start. It was a long hold for my money, but as the lights went out, Tombay, too much wheel spin. Good start by Tomczyk, and slow away from near the back of the grid was the Miguel Molina Audi, and also one of the Mercedes slow away as well, Danny Juncadella. But it's Ekstrom on the outside of Martin as they work their way up towards turn 1, and 3 into that corner just was not going to work. Ekstrom on the outside. I don't think it was deliberate on anybody's part, just a racing accident, but it's under investigation from another angle. Round goes Ekstrom, unlucky not to get collected in the dust and the smoke. We had an accident in an earlier race today, somebody unsighted with a dust cloud, but that could have been quite nasty.
Yes, it could. So we can see it from on board with Maxime Martin now as he gets the car away. Initially, not a brilliant start from Maxime Martin.
So up the inside of him was Da Costa.
Yeah.
So that forced Martin out wide into Ekstrom. That's how Wickens saw it. He got sideways as well, and he's the one that got a get out of jail free card there. Didn't get through that. Blimey. And there from the outside, Martin got tagged as Ekstrom came back across the road, and other people have got aero damage. That slow-mo is the most revealing shot yet, because you see how other cars got involved in it, little bits of damage. And actually, I'm surprised, given that there'll be bits on the road, that it wasn't neutralised for that, because often with the debris, race directors want to get the track clear. Now, Blomqvist, I thought that last radio message said, I'm faster, and was pushing for the team to try and get him up ahead of his teammate.
Well, of course, inevitably, if Blomqvist does go past Marco Wittmann, unless he can really get a poke on, Wittmann is going to have the benefit of DRS, which Blomqvist has got at the moment.
that's true if Wittmann has got the pace to stay with him and therefore be close enough to use it. And if he's losing touch with, or his lap times aren't as good as Blomqvist feels he could achieve, it might be that Tom can gap him straight away. But you see, Mortara is working his way back into the mix as well.
Yes.
Fourth place Glock you were riding with a moment ago up towards turn 2. But again, Blomqvist closing up under braking, and Mortara is right there as well. So can Mortara come up and attack Blomqvist now?
Possible, isn't it? So they head down to turn 3 then. And Tom Blom with DRS available to him is still not quite close enough to look at the inside of Wittmann going into turn 3, which is somewhere where a lot of people look. Not many people execute an overtake there, but they certainly look. And for my money, Blomqvist wasn't close enough. Yeah,
you can have a look and try and force a mistake out of somebody. Mortara, a little bit quicker in the first sector of the lap, trying to stay with them, mindful that Glock is there in 4th place. 5th still is Tomczyk, 6th is Tombe. And find me a Mercedes, 8th, Paul di Resta. So this is on board with Martin. I wonder how much damage he sustained, because it was the rear of the car that was glanced by the rotating extra.
Okay.
But you saw there was contact between them. If there's much damage, Martin's doing a very good job of hanging on to 7th place, and it could be 6th in a moment, because he's about to get onto the tail of Adrian Tombe.
Yes.
Here they come up towards the timing line, Dave.
And that's one of the Mercedes out.
So it's Juncker.
It is Daniel Juncker,
who made a slow start. Now I wonder whether it's a legacy of that, whether it was a problem. Oh no, it's a wheel that's wobbly. Is that broken suspension?
Looks like it, doesn't it?
So what's he hit to do that?
Broken track control arm, isn't it? Because I wonder where that.
Into the pits is coming Christian Vitoris. Are the two things related?
Possibly.
So there's a yellow flag where he has stopped, and there di Resta and Da Costa lean on each other. Di Resta was ahead, but Antonio Felix Da Costa just gets his nose in front. Di Resta will have the inside line for the next kink. They lean on each other again. The BMW to the inside line. Da Costa will go through, and Augusto Farfus goes through as well, or does he? Has a real long look on the inside, but backed out of it. Avoids contact. Brave effort.
Yeah, it was.
But up one further place then goes Da Costa, and Christian Vitoris is out of the race, and we are getting reports that yes, there was contact between the two Mercedes drivers. So Juncker is out, Vitoris is out. Retiring from a race with damage is one thing, but if it's been induced by your fellow Mark mate, then that goes down pretty badly in management circles. Right, Tombe's got away from Martin now, hasn't he? And what's the gap? Wittmann to Blomqvist, 0.6 of a second as they head up over the timing line. Mortara still waving the flag for Audi in 3rd spot. And of course the best Mercedes is now down in 9th, Paul di Resta, having lost out on that lap to Da Costa.
Yes, and I mean it was very forceful by Da Costa, wasn't it, through the exit of that turn 2. But made it work, and I did think he was going to lose another place to Gusto Farfus as well, but didn't in the end. But you can see just, you know, the pace the BMWs have had, because it's left Paul di Resta, hasn't it?
So that's Da Costa in replay. And of course the line he's on is inevitably going to push him out a little bit wide. Di Resta tries to stand his ground, but gets squeezed over the curb. This is how he saw it. Turns through the corner. There's one bit of contact as Da Costa gets up the inside. Gets forced out over the curb. And from another angle, there it is. Yeah, Da Costa hits the curb, leans on Di Resta, forces him out wide, and Farfus tried to buy into that, but couldn't quite do it. So there's a yellow flag out, of course, where Juncker has parked. And we've had effectively the first quarter of the race now. We've had the first 10 minutes just about. Wittmann leading, Blomqvist 2nd, Mortara 3rd, Glock, Tomczyk, Tombe ran out the top 6 ahead of Martin, Da Costa, Di Resta and Farfus in 10th place.
No further action is going to be taken over that incident that was under investigation, which involved Matthias Ekstrom, also Maxime Martin and Antonio Felix Da Costa right at the very start. So that clears up that little...
Yeah, it's just a racing accident, wasn't it? Everyone went for the same bit of tarmac. There was certainly nothing deliberate. And everybody suffered to an extent because some were delayed and some had damage. You're on board with Martin. We saw the back left corner of his car get a little bit graunched. And again, look, Blomqvist is there on the tail of Wittmann.
Martin is reeling Tombe now.
He'll get a tow, won't he? And he'll be able to use the DRS. He was 0.3 quicker in the first sector alone, and there's drama in the background. Was that Tombe running out a little bit wide? So that gives Martin the chance to challenge on the run towards turn 3, but they're going to be approaching that yellow flag zone. Into the braking zone they come, and Martin has done it. He's gone through. And Tombe losing out also to Da Costa. So Tombe is the man dropping down the field. Now, was that move completed before the waved yellow? Only just.
Yeah, very, very tight, wasn't it?
So what's happening to Tombe then? It was a slowish start, too much wheel spin, but compromised, it seems, at turn 2, and that's what's lost the momentum to lose 2 places. But let's hope it's not an issue with that car, because Tombe had qualified really well earlier on today. It was a mistake. He ran wide, didn't he, over the curb. So there you go. And Maxime Martin able to take full advantage of that.
And part of that mistake was the fact that Martin was putting the pressure on him, wasn't he? And just got the undercut there, didn't he, as he runs wide. He was always... Well, after saying that, Martin really had to go for it, didn't he?
Yeah, I think Tombe just braked a fraction too late because of the battle he was having, and therefore ran a little bit wide in the corner. But yeah, Martin did what he needed to do. He managed to force a mistake out of Tombe and make the move as a result of that. So the 3 leaders now covered by 1.2 seconds. Mortara closer now to Blomqvist than Blomqvist is to Wittmann.
Interesting.
Should be still yellow in turn 4. Watch for flags.
That's where Jonkadea has parked, and Da Costa under investigation for overtaking under a yellow flag. Yes, there's the first yellow, which takes him all the way around to Jonkadea's car. So, yeah, the move had started under a waved yellow. I didn't see the first one when we were looking at it a lap back, but there's confirmation of it, so the officials are having a look as well.
OK, so there's Mortara, and we're on board with Timo Glock now, who, for my money, is ever closer to Eduardo Mortara. So Mortara, of course, who's trying to get onto the back of Blomqvist, he's having to be very conscious of the fact that he's got Timo Glock hunting him down as well.
And he's got no help from anybody else from Audi. Drive-through penalty for Da Costa for overtaking under a waved yellow.
So his P7's out the window, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's one negative in the column for BMW. So as Timo Glock has briefly set the fastest lap, now Maxime Martin has set the fastest lap of the race. Martin is in 6th place, but it's a very BMW looking front, this, isn't it? They locked out the top 4 here back in 2014. Well, at the moment, there's Mortara spoiling the image, but I still would like to see what Blomqvist could do were he to be able to get past. Marco Wittmann hangs onto the race lead, one of the champions that is on this DTM grid, and
should be still yellow.
As they head down towards turn 3, the yellow flags are just around the corner, and again there, look at with the DRS, Blomqvist right onto the tail. Now, part of that is to try and, if you like, show BMW that he's quicker and ought to be in the lead, but also to try and get away from Mortara.
Yeah.
But then he gets stuck, so Mortara toes back into contention. So it's a bit Formula 3-ish this, isn't it, at the moment? Blomqvist just can't find a way past Wittmann. A, because it's not that easy to overtake, and B, because the last thing BMW needs is for the 2 of them to go at it and go off.
Absolutely.
Needs careful management, this, from the pit wall. Progress of Ekstrom, not really. 22nd he is. He's running in last place, but he is still circulating. Gary Paffert's made a bit of progress. He's up into 19th place, but really, people that qualified badly are still stuck.
Yes.
So Da Costa yet to serve the drive-through. That will shuffle the order, of course, once he comes in. And he's not in yet. So we're on lap number 11. We've got 25.5 minutes to go. Timo Glock busy to the team. Marco Wittmann in super slow-mo.
Should be 6 laps left.
So Wittmann's advantage, 0.6 of a second over Blomqvist. 0.4 back is Mortara, and Mortara now looking very, very toey about this, isn't he?
Track clear, track clear.
So Glock being told that the yellow flags have gone in, he can push and he can attack at this part of the circuit, but it could well be 3, could be 4 for the lead.
I think you're right. So Eduardo Mortara then in the tow with the DRS. He's closer than he's been, isn't he?
But there is one benefit to now Wittmann stacking up Blomqvist and getting Mortara onto the tail. If Glock gets onto the back of Mortara,
yes,
from BMW's point of view, there is the chance that Glock could get past Mortara while Mortara's trying to get past Blomqvist. So they might make this work to their advantage. Depends how they play this. They can stack Mortara back into Glock and Tomczyk, then it could be very good for BMW. You've got a feel for Mortara. He's kind of taking on BMW single-handed.
Yes, he is, really.
Yeah.
So we're on board with Timo Glock then, following the Eduardo Mortara car ahead. Look how uphill it is before you go into turn number 1 here. Braking at the very, very last minute. Just kissing the apex. runs out a little bit wide. Here comes Antonio Felix da Costa to take his drive-through penalty. That will, as David has said, shuffle the order.
And this was it. And yeah, there's the waved yellow. Yeah, so the one I'd spotted was the second one round the corner. So he got the move done before the second, but it started after the first. So you look at that, he's absolutely banged to rights, isn't he? So da Costa comes into the pit lane, serves the drive-through, plummets down the order. There he is. He's back on track, but effectively now in last place. So the Formula E regular giving up the Berlin E Prix to come and do DTM duty. Not getting the result he would want. So there's your leading quintet, and it's all bunching up.
Yes, it is. We have 23.5 minutes of the race still to go.
And Maxime Martin is still trucking along in 6th place, and he could get up with them by the end. Not only has da Costa been given a drive-through.
Should be 2 laps less. At the moment you have 5, he 3.
Not only is da Costa having had that drive-through, he's also got a driving standards flag for forcing another car off the road. And Bruno Spengler is under investigation now for overtaking under a yellow flag as well.
Well, we just saw a shot of Christian Vittoris, who's now having to view the race from inside his garage, which is not where he would want to be. We're on board with Eduardo Mortara then, who, as David has quite rightly said, is carrying the...
You sure? Yeah, I need to know. You have to tell me also when I can save it.
Carrying the brand of Audi in amongst these BMWs.
You should have 2 laps more than him. 2 laps more DRS.
Glock 0.8 second.
So once again going on board with Mortara, and the radio traffic then is about the laps and DRS.
Yes, they've worked out how many opportunities you have to use it, which therefore means how many laps you can use them for, because you sort of count 3 off a lap, and so Glock has more DRS uses left than does Mortara. So the theory would be that if Mortara gets stuck behind the 2 leading BMWs, he is more prone to being attacked because Glock has got 2 more laps of DRS usage.
And Glock is really, really close now, as we are right behind Eduardo Mortara, riding on board with Timo Glock. Or out of the final turn, heading now towards the uphill section, which leads you into turn number 1, as the Daniel Juncadella car is recovered.
And this was the contact up at turn 2. Juncadella understeers into Vittoris.
Glock 2 lap DRS advantage.
So what you just heard is Mortara's team, the Abt team, confirming that Glock has got 2 more laps worth of DRS to use, and that's not going to be good news for Mortara now.
No, it isn't. As David picks up the rule book from Audi, which says how to make that as wide as possible, which is what he's going to need to do. And look, Glock's so close now. Glock is closer than he has been. This is the battle for P3. We're on board with Timo Glock now. Fantastic images that we can bring you of this DTM race. Eduardo Mortara, the Audi ahead.
Mortara should have 1 more lap.
So this DRS usage being monitored totally by the teams, and the information passed on to the drivers. Whilst all that's going on, Wittmann and Blomqvist are up the road. The incident between Vittoris and Daniel Juncadella, of which we saw a replay just a few moments ago, under investigation. And this is Timo Glock walking hard. Again, another lap completed. Over the timing line they go. Wittmann just 4 tenths ahead of Blomqvist in P2. And there they go. There's Eduardo Mortara. There is Timo Glock. And behind Timo Glock, of course, we've hardly mentioned Martin Tomczyk, who is running well in P5, with Maxime Martin P6, before we get to the first Mercedes-Benz, which is Paul di Resta running in P7.
And then it's Tombe, Farfus and Goetz. So Max Goetz in the top 10. Always has a big fan club when he comes and races here. And Mortara getting ever more agitated about this. The incident, by the way, between Juncadella and Vittoris is being reported to the stewards. They'll have a look at it and see if any action needs taking. Neither of them are still circulating, so it's a bit academic anyway. I think it was just a rather clumsy racing incident. Mortara getting back onto the back of Blomqvist, who's on the tail of Wittmann. They're all being caught by Glock. This is Mortara's view. And he has got the toughest life of all at the moment. He's trying to attack, he's trying to defend.
You're right, you're right. He is the lone ranger in that BMW field at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah.
So staying on board with Eduardo Mortara for a couple of moments more as we see P1-2, and there is Eduardo Mortara.
If he uses that DRS to get away, it won't help him because he's going to get stuck.
Should have no more DRS. Mortara should have no more DRS.
Right, so Mortara's now used them all, so
he should be vulnerable.
He's vulnerable, yeah. But Glock has to be careful when he uses them, because if he uses the extra 2 laps worth that he's got and he can't get past,
it's wasted.
Absolutely. So he's got to be absolutely dead set sure it's going to pay off for him.
Using it now.
Indeed so. And is he going to dive up the inside at turn 2? No, he's closer as they come out of the corner, though. They'll drop downhill, down towards Rauch. On board with Glock, then. If this battle develops, it'll take the pressure off the top 2 a little bit. But Mortara, I think, has done a very good job here, keeping up with the BMWs as Glock has a look up the inside. Can't find a way through there. Spengler being reported to the stewards for overtaking under a yellow flag. Mortara having to go defensive. It's looking a bit inevitable now that Glock's going to find a way past, isn't it?
Certainly is. Looking that way as Glock, with the advantage of DRS that Eduardo Mortara doesn't have now, really is going to have to defend and defend and defend. And there Glock uses the DRS once again. Wing flicks back up.
But little good has it done him.
Arguably, it was a waste, wasn't it?
Yeah. And he runs wide as well, coming out of that last corner. The Red Bull Mobile, or Mobile curve, up over the timing line. Mortara has certainly dropped back from the 2 leaders, but he's still got half a second in hand over Glock.
"17 minutes of the race still to do. It's the long run up to long run up to turn 2.
Copy. That's your last lap with DRS.
In other words, you're on your own now, Timo.
Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, and be careful.
Martin behind has no more DRS, but behind him, Maxime has 8 laps, I think.
So Tomczyk has used all of his, but Martin has got a lot more to use. So Maxime Martin could be the danger here. Given that, we've still got 16.5 minutes and a lap still to run.
Well, for all of that, Timo is as close to Eduardo Mortara as he has been.
But Tomczyk is closer to Glock than he's been in the 2 as well.
Yes, he is. Let me see Maxime Martin.
Correction. Behind, there's still 1 lap of DRS for Martin.
Right, so Glock's vulnerable now from 2 passes. Tomczyk's got a lap's worth left. Martin has got more than that. There is Tomczyk, this year in the Schnitzer car. And although DTM drivers carry a permanent number, Tomczyk's permanent number is different for this year.
Yes.
Because he's number 100 to tie in with BMW's centenary. So up towards turn 1 he comes. He's on the back of Glock, but Maxime Martin, he's almost with them, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Wide he went at turn 1, actually, Martin. But Timo Glock hard at work, trying to stay with Mortara and defend from Tomczyk.
That was a long look into the rear-view mirror, wasn't it?
But it needs to be really now, because as we've heard, he's vulnerable. And then what's going on behind? Tombe's got Farfus up behind him. That could change before the end of the race as well. 15 minutes and change plus a lap on the clock. We're on lap 18 now. Race graphic there showing Ekstrom up to 19th, Paffett up to 17th, Green 16th, Rockenfeller 15th, but none of those drivers going home with a result they'll be proud of.
No.
And Wickens into the top 10. He's got a point out of this. So there's Glock downhill. Tomczyk shadowing him. Is Mortara getting away? I reckon he is on this lap.
Yeah, you might be right. Well, Mortara then is the one that's spoiling the BMW Fest at the front at the moment. And you have to say, it's very, very good driving from Edo Mortara. Hold his own against the threat of Timo Glock and the ever-closer Martin Tomczyk as we watch the rest of the pack. There's Jamie Green and Gary Paffett, who you mentioned just a moment ago, running down there in P16 and P17. Certainly not where they would want to be running. Martin is not making the impression on Tomczyk that I thought he would, perhaps.
No, his lap time was half a second slower, but don't forget he's got a bit of damage on the left rear corner. So whether that's just slightly not the handling out after that incident with Ekstrom at the start, we did see a brush to the back of the car. And you know how fine a beast a DTM car is with the aeros. So
yes.
Am I defending Maxime unnecessarily? But it could be that the car is not 100%.
Nico Muller, who's running in P11, and we're on board with right now.
A replay here of Muller getting up the inside of Goetz, and does that give him the place? It does. That's how he got 11th spot. Brave move. On board with Muller. Gap on the inside. He commits. He just about threads it up the inside. There is just the width, but it's a tight corner that, and Goetz ends up being sacrificed on the outside. So Muller's next target is Robert Wickens, and he's 9/10 of a second back, and he's lapping quicker in the sectors. He could be on it for a trip into the points here, but Wickens is attacking Farfus. They almost get together going down towards the Rindt curve. So Wickens trying to find a way past the BMW. This is a proper DTM battle because you've got one of each brand running nose to tail.
Yes.
Over the timing line they come. Now, is this an opportunity for Wickens to make a move up the hill?
Behind is saving his DRS. He still has one.
Tomczyk saving the DRS against Glock, but right now it's 9th, 10th and 11th that we're looking at on the very, very long climb up towards turn 2. On board with Nico Muller then. He's inching up onto the tail of Wickens. Wickens is on the back of Farfus.
Is Muller going to go for a repeat move here?
No, but Spengler's going to have a go at Goetz. And they get together, and Spengler powers his way through, elbows out. He's already being investigated for overtaking under a yellow, and Spengler gains another place. That puts him 12th at the expense of Goetz, who now comes under attack from Molina as they head down towards turn 3, and Goetz is getting a bit fed up with people overtaking him. He and Molina get together, and Rockefeller's going to try and buy into this as well.
Wow.
And Green, and Paffett. And Goetz, look at this, gets forced out wide. Molina tries the outside line. Rockefeller tries to get up the inside of Molina and then thinks, oh, Audi driver, best be careful here. Molina not impressed with the way Goetz is defending.
We saw it on television, we saw it, he drove into you 2 times.
And it's under investigation, the incident between Goetz and Molina. So this is Spengler up the inside of Goetz.
It's pretty forceful, to be fair.
Yeah, touring car move that. But Goetz doesn't want to be overtaken by Molina. And in fairness, has got the inside line for that corner. Molina skims the back of him, yeah, absolutely, as he tried to change sides. Gets up the inside down towards turn 3. Right, Muller's on a charge now. Makes his move, and he's got past Robert Wickens. So Robert Wickens drops down, out of the points. Muller into the top 10 now. So Nico Muller, pole position at Hockenheim for the opener. On the podium there as well, charging, and he's into the top 10. Interesting, isn't it, as some cars are getting stronger late in the race. Let's have another look at how he did it. Uses the DRS on the way up the hill, and with the DRS, it's no wonder he just powers past. Yeah. There's not much Robert Wickens can do to repel that.
Whilst they were doing that, Ekstrom was ever closer to Gary Paffett. I know it's way down the order, down in P17, but they were very close together, and reminiscent of them being very close together in Hockenheim in race 1.
Yeah, the last time DTM was here in the wet and drying race last August, it was Ekstrom the winner, Paffett chasing him home in 2nd place, but they're a long way down the order today, as you rightly say. Right, we're on lap 22, about to see the lead gap go through at 8/10 of a second. Wittmann with his constant shadow of a rather frustrated, I would imagine, Tom Blomqvist, who has proved everything in terms of his pace, but it's not getting him anywhere. And now Molina gets run off the road down at turn 3. So his day's going from bad to worse as well. Rockefeller, I think, was looking for a way by. We're about to hear from Molina, but I suspect it would only be grumpiness.
9 laps to go. Keep your pace up, Max. Keep your pace up. Rockefeller behind you right now is out of DRS, so keep your pace up.
Goetz 13th, Rockefeller 14th, just to finish that off.
So this is Muller then, reeling in Augusto Farfus. So this is Audi and BMW ahead of him. So Nico Muller then. who has pulled away from Robert Wickens following that overtake, which, as I said, probably took him a lap longer than he would have liked. Now hunting down Augusto Farfus for P9. So, good showing from that Audi at the moment, isn't it? Given how dominant that the BMW brand is. So we go once again on board with Nico Müller.
The lead gap is down again. You can see them going into turn 1, and although Mortara doesn't look as though he's going to be able to have a go at the race lead anymore, Blomqvist has brought the gap down to Wittmann again to just 0.6 of a second, so he's always been able to stay there, live on the back of the leader. DRS admittedly has helped in that, but even so, it's been a good showing by Tom Blom.
Is Müller going to line up Farfus for a run up to turn 2 now as we watch the rest of the cars through turn 1?
Spangler in front on his last DRS.
We're on board with Müller. For my money, he's not close enough.
He's going to brake as late as he dares. Is that going to help him on the run down towards turn 3? He's a little bit nearer. Don't forget the Audi is lighter, only by a couple and a half kilos, but it is fractionally lighter than the BMW. But on the run downhill, is that going to make much of a difference? Heading towards turn 3 now, with 8 more minutes on the clock, plus a lap at the end. Race leading gap just creeping up a little bit in the midpoint of this 23rd lap of the race as the cars work their way downhill and the climb towards Pirelli. And this is the man doing the chasing in 3rd place in the Audi RS5 DTM. It is Eduardo Mortara, 2nd, the Ice Watch BMW, the colours carried this year by Tom Blomqvist, formerly carried by this man who's leading the race. This is Marco Wittmann, who's taken over the livery that Antonio Felix da Costa had last year. It all shuffles around. Da Costa in the colours that Blomqvist ran in last season. But Mortara, there going out of turn 1, the Castrol Edge corner in the Castrol Audi, doing his best to stay with them. The top 3 still covered by a 1.5 seconds, but Glock has fallen quite a long way back now in 4th place.
Right. And Glock to Tomczyk.
Rockefeller behind has 5 DRS. Rockefeller behind has 5 DRS.
I was going to say Glock to Tomczyk is just 9/10, so...
It's interesting that Rockefeller, with less than 7 minutes to go, has got so many DRS left. Yes, you know, you could argue that he's saving them up to the end of the race to gain places when others have used theirs, but by doing that, the number of places you can gain are limited because other people have pulled away.
You're going to, yes. We go back on board with Nico Müller then. So now we cross to Martin Tomczyk. Chasing down Timo Glock. Tomczyk currently running P5. Timo Glock is P4. And they're the two of them in the BMWs. As I said earlier, the BMW Fest being somewhat ruined at the moment by Eduardo Mortara, who has been resolute there in P3.
So 1 or 2 nervous BMW engineers watching Glock and Tomczyk go through with that gap having just come down. Martin Tomczyk has just done a personal best lap, so he's closing up onto the back of the former Grand Prix racer. Maxime Martin not staying with them either, as you mentioned a few laps back, but if there is much damage on that car, he's been able to drive around it reasonably well. So yes. Martin heading for 6th, 7th behind him is De Resta. Actually going to shuffle the championship a little bit, isn't it? Be interesting going into tomorrow. But now with 5.5 minutes to go, dare one say that it's just about settled down really for the first time, because now the gaps are there and you kind of get the feeling that whatever Tom Blomqvist thinks about his pace relative to Wittmann's, the situation's being managed now.
Yes, yes, I think you would you'd be right there. There is Wittmann then. Further back down the order, this is Jamie Green.
That's bold, but yes, it works. Gains the place. Trying to go after Rockefeller in so doing, so working his way through the traffic. Getting up past Gertz. He was falling away. He's lost another 2 places on that lap as Max Gertz. He's coming under attack now from Paffett, and then you've got Ekstrom in the queue. So the race leader then onto that number 26, 4.5 minutes to go. Through goes Green, through goes Gertz, through goes Ekstrom. In fact, Paffett's dropped back on that lap because Timo Scheider's got past him. So Gertz made a move against Spengler on the outside. which was never going to work. He ran out of road, and Rockenfeller gets past him, and then Jamie Green darts to the inside. Gertz versus Ekstrom. Mercedes ahead of Audi. Ekstrom tries to get the cut back, can't do it. This is for 15th place now, the two of them together, but you'd put your money on Ekstrom here, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think you would.
Tries one side, then the other. Gertz being very, very defensive in this race. Remember what Molina said about him a few laps ago. And if Gertz runs a little bit wide here, Ekstrom might get the chance to get alongside as they head downhill, but Maxi Gertz hangs onto the place as they drop down towards Pirelli. Behind is Scheider, then Paffett, so Gary has fallen back into 18th place now. And dust being kicked up as Jamie Green has gone way, way wide further up the road. He gets away with that, although it'll make his tyres a little bit grubby for a corner or two. Have to clean those up as the race leaders have just gone over the timing line, starting now lap 27. So Ekstrom still on the back of Gertz, still can't find a way past him.
So around the final turn then, and Gertz looks a bit wayward, doesn't he? Yeah. And Matthias Ekstrom lining him up now as they head up towards turn number 1. And Paul de Resta running there in P7, the best of the Mercedes drivers.
Adrian Tombay on his tail.
He is.
That gap's come down, actually. Tombay looking a little bit more likely to have a go before the end of the race. He was the best at the Audi qualifiers, but that slow start and then a mistake in the first third of the race has gone against him. But if he can salvage a place back, that would help Audi in the manufacturers' contest, of course. But we're going to get, what, 3 more laps? Depends where the race leaders are, really, in relation to the clock when they next cross the timing line. There's Farfus keeping Muller at bay. That looked like it might change a few laps back.
Yeah,
ninth place. But
gone away a bit now, hasn't it?
Yeah. Muller has plateaued a bit there. There's Rockenfeller ahead of Spengler, who, of course, is going to be reported to the stewards. Clearly his yellow flag infringement, if it was one, less clear-cut than that of Da Costa.
Yes.
Right, the leaders have gone through. There's going to be time for this lap, 1 more, and then the obligatory lap at the end. So what does that give us, 3?
Yeah.
Is that time enough for anything else to shuffle? Muller is a fraction closer to Farfus as they head uphill. A very, very steep climb into turn 1. And you look across, you can see bits of the race circuit, bits of the infield used for all the manufacturer days and corporate days, but that infield section that just majestically flows downhill round the Red Bull that watches over everything that goes on here. This is the run down towards turn 3. Wittmann, Blomqvist, Mortara. And Edo Mortara has virtually single-handedly taken on BMW in this.
I think it's an extraordinary drive.
It's a very impressive effort, isn't it? And not for the want of trying, will he only be 3rd?
No.
So here they come, downhill. Marco Wittmann, really for the first time, I would suggest now, is creeping away from Blomqvist, which sort of makes me think that it is now a case of settling for position. It's going to be a BMW 1-2, which is great for the Jens Marquardt run teams, as Edo Mortara still really pressing on there, works his way through in 3rd spot. Mortara from 4th on the grid, gained off the line, didn't he? And after that, he's been staring at the back of Blomqvist's BMW race long, whereas Glock really has faded away.
Yes. On board with him now, running in P4, running a bit wide at that point as he takes this run up now to turn number 2 through the kink here. See the cars ahead, and then it's a very, very uphill section, and then when you turn into this turn, you're still going uphill now.
And then over the crest, plunge downhill. Quick check in the mirror to see where Martin Tomczyk is, but he's far enough ahead. Right, the clock has hit 0, so they're going to get 1 more lap at the end of this, aren't they?
And for my money, Eduardo Mortara has done an outstanding job, hasn't he, to uphold the mark of Audi. Best Mercedes-Benz at the moment is Paul de Resta in P7. That doesn't look like altering, does it?
No. And then where do you get another one? Wickens 11th, and Gertz, the 3rd of the Mercedes, down in 15th place. The Audis, Mortara from Tombay from Muller. BMW is Wittmann, Blomqvist, Glock. into Nissan top 3. So you've got there Marco Wittmann.
Final lap.
Going on to his last lap, confirmed by his engineer. Over the timing line he goes, and he's 7/10 up on Blomqvist, with in third place Mortara a further 6/10 back. So Marco Wittmann has done everything right. He got pole position, he made a great start, he's led all the way. At one point it did look like he was holding up Blomqvist, and Tom on the radio saying he was quicker, but yes, a Red Bull car is on target for a win at the Red Bull Ring.
Around the Remus turn then. And Wittmann with that Red Bull livery, as you've rightly said, heading towards the checkered flag. What the remainder of this lap hasn't really put a foot wrong, has he?
No.
You're right. I think early on Blomqvist did appear to have the pace, didn't he? But didn't have the pace to get past. And Eduardo Mortara has managed somehow to stick with these two for the entire duration of the race. The threat of Timo Glock taking that P3 place away from him came and went. And Glock equally has been able to see off the challenge from Martin Tomczyk, who is running in P5. So Marco Wittmann then has this turn before he heads towards the checkered flag.
Guys, first win of the season. Great job.
And takes the win at the Red Bull Ring.
Well done, Marco, well done.
Good P2 for Tom Blomqvist and a brilliant P3 for Eduardo Mortara. As the rest of the order come through and cross the line.
It's Glock for 4th, it's Tomczyk 5th, Martin 6th, De Resta 7th, Torme is 8th, Farfus 9th, Muller 10th. They score points ahead of Wickens, Rockenfeller, Spengler with a question mark over him, Green 14th, Goetz, Eriksson. So Maxi Goetz hung on to the place, Scheider 17th, and Paffett, Molina, Ocon, Auer and Da Costa. Two non-finishers, both Mercedes, after they drove into each other at turn 2, Vitoris and Junqueira. So there's the man of the moment. Marco Wittmann takes a 6th career win in the DTM. Last year, coming on the back of his championship winning season, was a bit of a barren season for him, but he's bounced back now in the RMG run BMW. Blomqvist in 2nd, also for RBM. So we're talking about BMW as a brand, but it's RMG ahead of RBM. Two different teams. Mortara 3rd ahead of Glock. Then Martin Tomczyk, Maxime Martin, Paul De Resta from Adrian Torme, Augusto Farfus and Nico Müller. The point scorers ahead of Wickens and Rockenfeller to round out the top dozen. Spengler, Green, Goetz, Ekstrom and the rest of the field. But it's a delighted Jens Marquardt who's overseen a 1-2 at the Red Bull Ring. Verena.
Well, Jens Marquardt then receiving the late birthday present that he wanted. What a result for his manufacturer, for his brand of BMW, as we see the cars of Tom Blomqvist and Eduardo Mortara. Edo already out of the car. We await Marco Wittmann. And just as we speak, there the car arrives behind position number 1. So BMW, Audi, the 1, 2, 3. Best of the Mercedes-Benz, P7 for the man that won at Hockenheim, Paul De Resta. So Wittmann out of the car then.
Stands atop the front bodywork, and a very, very happy man indeed.
You know why? It's all because I opened the door for him at lunchtime.
Is that it?
It's what I think is, you know, been a lucky omen for him.
Right. Doesn't work for me, but anyway, there we are. So Marco Wittmann and Tom Blomqvist congratulate one another. An excellent result for BMW, but as we've been saying, Eduardo Mortara, the best Audi, but comfortably the best Audi, up there in third place.
Yes.
Mercedes has got a bit of soul searching, hasn't it?
Yes.
A long way back, but to recap the top three, Eduardo Mortara it is who takes that third place in the Castrol Edge sponsored but ABD run Audi. He in the end was 1.2 seconds back on Tom Blomqvist, who in turn was 0.7 of a second adrift of Marco Wittmann.
He really seemed to have some pace that the other Audis didn't have.
Mortara definitely, and Blomqvist I think had good pace early on, and you can understand perhaps the frustration that he felt he ought to be getting ahead of Wittmann, but it wasn't to be. Marco Wittmann managed to hang on in there and score a 6th career win. Blomqvist has a good track record around here in Formula 3, been a winner in the past in the Formula 3 car around this circuit. But today, second place, and playing the team game with BMW will do no harm at all, of course, with coming into this race. Marco Wittmann having been 12th in the championship, but Tom Blomqvist 9th equal, it does help Wittmann back into contention.
Yes. So some super slow-mos of the top three then. And the celebrations from Marco Wittmann out of the car. Going back to the interview with Niki Lauda earlier in the programme before the race started. Be pretty disappointed, I would think, that the very best of the Mercedes brand was only P7. So they're heli shot of this circuit. And in the Drivers' Championship then, Paul di Resta's lead at 43 points, Eduardo Mortara 40, and all of a sudden vaulted up there into P3 is Marco Wittmann.
As now the best of the BMW drivers.
Yes.
He's ahead of Robert Wickens, who's only a point up on Martin, who is only a point up on Blomqvist. Then Muller, Farfus, Pavitt and Glock tie for 9th equal, as does Martin Tomczyk. So tomorrow's longer race has, of course, the pit stop and the tyre change, and a more strategic element to enable the teams to try and get a result. Of course, more things can go wrong with pit stops, but you can use them to your advantage as well. And from what we are told, the weather gods are going to be on our side as well, unlike last year. So let's hear from the man that was second, Tom Blomqvist, only 0.7 of a second back on the winner, Marco Wittmann. Tom is with Verena.
Thank you very much, Verena.
It's what Tom didn't say that was more interesting than what he said, wasn't it? There was a message in that wasn't expressed in words, but in hint. So Paul di Resta is even more frustrated, 7th. Yeah, he might have been the best of the Mercedes drivers, but it was a bit of a poor day at the office for the Mercedes drivers. Marco Wittmann, Tom Blomqvist and Eduardo Mortara make their way out onto the podium at the end of round 3 of the DTM here at the Red Bull Ring.
So top step then for Marco Wittmann. And the national anthem will play out then for the former champion. Well, the ADAC Sport President, Mr. Herman Tomczyk, making the trophy presentation to Marco Wittmann on the top step of the podium.
Kind of to one of his own, given that his son Martin is a BMW driver. That's a home win, isn't it, for the ADAC in a sense? But Herman Tomczyk then gives the team trophy as well to a delighted BMW squad. The RMG team victorious then. Manfred Sandbichler from Hankook steps forward to hand over a trophy to Tom Blomqvist. Not for the first time. Many were handed over in Formula 3 days. That survived.
Nearly went.
Yeah. Need to just check the aero of that, Tom. And Walter Matters, the board member for the ITRAV, steps forward with the trophy for Eduardo Mortara for third place. Handshakes all round. And then the drivers will get together for photographs. And then at the end of a long day, there'll be some Henkel Trocken sprayed, but Marco Wittmann orchestrating the photographs. Thumbs up, all smiles. And tomorrow's race will be from a completely separate qualifying session, so it might be a very, very different looking grid. We'll wait and see how that pans out, qualifying earlier on in the day. But for now, Marco Wittmann celebrates a win in round 3 of the DTM at the Red Bull Ring.
So the Henkel Trocken then being sprayed in various directions. And I'm
sure Marco's missed a trick here by not taking a can of Red Bull with him.
Yes. Well, towels are dished out. Stand by for the mop man.
Yes. It's less fun with a towel than the bottle of champagne, I think, but more interviews to be conducted as Marco Wittmann's about to drop the bottle of champagne to his team, which will hopefully catch it. Tom Blomqvist oh so nearly lost the trophy. Heavy things, balls. You've got to be careful. Weight distribution, it's different. Yeah, look at that.
That was a good save, actually, wasn't it?
Eyes out like chapel hat pegs then when he's already nearly done. But Tom Blomqvist takes second, then Marco Wittmann the winner. But Eduardo Mortara on the podium as well for Audi. And Marco Wittmann will be delighted with that after, as we were saying at the end of the race, a pretty barren time last year.
So he's with Verena now, Marco Wittmann.
How did you manage to get Eduardo Mortara in your back? To hold him in your back?
Well, I think we had a good race today. Marco didn't make any mistakes, so it made my life easier just to be able to follow and keep close to make sure I had DRS at least. And I mean, he had to do the same. So I knew once he ran out of DRS, it was just going to be a similar race. So, but we had the pace today. So that was the most important thing.
Now, how are you managing the DRS?
Thanks very much, Verena. So Marco then explaining how and his particular personal strategy worked out. I think certainly at the beginning of the race, I think it'd be fair to say that Tom really challenged and perhaps had the pace, certainly with the DRS assistance, of course, but never quite able to make it stick.
I think if Mortara had been more of a threat, they might have had to play it differently. But we'll hear from Eduardo Mortara, the third place man. He's with Verena.